Live streaming is on.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good something. I don't know because I don't know if you're watching this live or in zombie mode. Zombie mode doesn't really mean that you're dead, but it means that you're not watching it live.
Live streaming is
And
on.
after
Hello,
that,
good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
shut up, YouTube. And after that stupid joke, my usual public service announcement of the day, said in my usual polite way. Let me prepare. Wear your fucking mask. Let me repeat. Wear your fucking mask. I don't care if you're a suicidal idiot, you want to kill yourself, fuck you, that's your problem. Kill yourself. You know, like the Romans. Die. We don't care. But I care that you can kill other people. Your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your best friend, your elders, your kids, anybody. Somebody just said 3 months ago, oh, I missed you. I haven't seen you in a long time. Blah, blah, blah. And the first time you see him or her or non-binary, oh, I'm gonna hug you, I'm gonna wear no mask. You can kill that person or cause really, really bad illnesses that stay with them chronically forever. And that I care a lot more about. So please wear your mask. And again, as I keep repeating, if you believe you're Superman, you are immortal, untouchable, and you don't give a shit about yourself or any others, please leave this channel now. I don't want you here. I don't want potential murderers in my channel. With that said, in my usually polite way, hello, Phil. How are you, my friend?
I am fine. I would like to leap immediately onto that by saying that I feel very much the same way you do about mask wearing for numerous reasons. One is because we know how effective it is, but two, I wear my mask not because I'm afraid of getting sick. We had COVID in March and we recovered, thank God. But it's because I worry about other people. And one of the things that has just been a struggle, although I will say most people in New York City have been, at least in my neighborhood, have been pretty good about it, remains the questions in my brain when I see groups of people who are not wearing masks. Because I find myself wondering, A, do they not believe? B, do they not know anyone, which seems impossible in New York City, who has been hurt by this virus? Or C, do they not care about other people?
Yes.
I wear my mask now. It is in many ways performative because I believe it is something that we should all do. I believe the statistic came out yesterday in New York City that only 22% of people have been exposed to the virus, which means there's an enormous swath of our city that has been protected from it so far. And I would like to keep protecting people from it. So I would just like to say the reason to wear a mask is so much not about us. It's not about me. It is about other people.
Yes, exactly. That's why I keep saying you can get somebody else killed or chronically ill because it's not about you. It's about the people that you can affect. You know, it's not about protecting yourself. It's about what you spit and
100%.
And protecting others. What is the thing that you miss the most? If I was your Dr. Frankenstein, as I usually am, wear my syringe in there and say, "Hey, you're free. Everything is over. We're fine. We can go anywhere and do whatever the fuck we want." What would be the first thing you would be like, "Oh my God, I'm dying to do this"?
Honestly, the thing I miss the most is travel. This is the least amount of travel time I've spent in a year in about 20 years. I travel, particularly in the past few years, once every couple of months. Mm-hmm. In recent years, it has been mostly in the States, traveling to different cities in the United States. But the thing that I really miss, and I had 2 trips planned this year. One was to Venice, Italy, and then one was to Japan in November. And of course, both those trips were canceled. And I realized that travel, not only do I love it, but it provides me with a global perspective. Mm-hmm. It provides me with a way of seeing the world that I feel without it, my view becomes very limited.
Yes.
Which I dislike immensely. And I even see it in myself. And so travel for me was always valuable because not only did I meet people clearly like you, but it gave me perspective on the world. So that is the thing that I miss the most. Strangely, what I don't miss as much are restaurants for a single reason. I've become a really good cook. The past, like, I think many people have the same story. I've been cooking a lot for me and Joe for a couple of years, but during COVID, I ended up cooking 2 or 3 meals a day quite regularly, and became a really good cook. And I like it, and I find it's very much an expression of love and joy, etc. But I've been very interested in cooking, and so I am in no great rush to get back to restaurants, simply because I like cooking.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually been kind of funny.
That's do you cook bread too, or only regular cooking?
Do I cook? I'm sorry, what?
Do you make bread too?
Like bread?
Bread, yeah.
No, only because I'm diabetic. So I don't make a lot of bread, but like it's mostly I have baked pies and cookies. Joe will make bread, but mostly what I'm cooking are actual meals.
Yes, the real stuff.
As opposed to baking or desserts. I know many people started again. They were making pies all of a sudden. In the United States, we ran out of flour.
Yeah, that happened here too. The flour craziness was global. Every time I talk to somebody out of Spain saying supermarkets run out of flour, and they were like, "Oh no, it's not only you." It's like, what? Yeah, here too. Like where? London, Paris, New York, LA. Like, what the fuck is going on?
And it makes me think, of course, about the psychology of baking, right? Mm-hmm. And so clearly that has an effect, a positive effect on the people that do it. I mean, the food is often also very comforting, but the process of baking appealed, I guess, globally to. So, but we found the problem was when I would make cookies, we would eat them all. Right, like the same day. We didn't.
Yeah, in one sitting, like, oh, they look good. Let me try one.
Yeah, let's.
200,000 later, you're like, oh, shit.
And we were very, very good during lockdown about eating well, because without exercise and being outside for a couple of months, honestly, I was just afraid of diabetes, like the effects of my diabetes.
No,
and so we ate very, very well. And the minute we introduced things like cookies back into our diet, we ate them very, very quickly. So I only baked a few times for that. But what do you like? So as I understand it, and please tell me, Spain has struggled with this as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I have a couple of friends in Barcelona, but do you find that it is the same psychology at work among the Spanish? Like why does Spain struggle?
I think there's many reasons, but the main reason is that we were among the first to be like New York. I think New York was the same case in the US. The first ones after Italy to get caught in it. There was no time to prepare at all. It was suddenly they were talking about canceling flights from and to Italy, but there were people already coming or coming back home from Italy. So you know how it is. It takes one and it spreads to 3 and then to 5. So in the time it took to stop those, we already have people here with the contagion. So, and then of course, Barcelona, Madrid are 2 of the 5th mostly dense towns in Europe. I think it's Barcelona, Madrid, Milan, Paris, and I'm not sure it's London, but the most densely populations, if you have 2 of 5, of course, what happened, Barcelona and Madrid were hugely affected.
Right.
So, but I think Spain reacted really well, as New York did. As I always put an example or really similar, because we were the first to, Spain and New York, I mean, in going really, really into a hardcore lockdown. Say, there's no middle of the road. It's like, if we're going to do it, it's got to be state of alarm. Everybody's off the streets for 3 months. And that's what we did here. Unfortunately, right now we are in a second wave. Expected.
Yes.
And they're more under control now because, it is not affecting the elders as it did so you have a lot of people now. We know the numbers in contagion are growing again, but it's 30 to 45 people, 30 to 45 year old, to say it that way. So it's not the same. It's like they are not occupying the ICUs, so it's less risky. But right now it's less, and we know a lot more, as is the case in New York.
Yes.
So you know how to control it much better. But in our case, it was literally we were the first affected, and there was no way to. Honestly, I think there was no way to control it. People didn't know. Every day you have people from the government talking about it, and you could see they were like, "No, science is learning." So of course, politicians go behind it.
Yes, I think when we look back on history with New York City, we still closed about 2 weeks later than we should have.
Yeah.
Which I think was driven by politicians and economy. They were just afraid of shutting down the economy. Yeah. It was fascinating though, because I've been watching. I have friends who are news producers here on one of our news stations, so I tend to watch their morning program a lot. And they, for several days before this occurred, they had a doctor on, maybe even 2 weeks. They're like one of their talking heads who was like, "This is going to be bad. This is going to be bad." And of course, this doctor was always wedged between stories of Donald Trump being an asshole or a celebrity in news. It was never like the news, right? It was always just one more rolling news story.
Yeah.
And then, but I remember hearing it being kind of fascinating because this doctor was very serious about it. And then what's amazing to me is there were 3 people in my life who told me like, this is going to be bad and you need to prepare. And one of them is a comic book fan I've known for years. He's a cosplayer. A zillion years ago, I had him. When I was doing this little YouTube show, he was like one of the guest hosts, and he works in the military and he works in chemical warfare. And he'd written a couple of Facebook posts, and he wrote me privately, and kind of calmly but sternly was like, "This is going to be terrible, and you need to do these things to take care of yourself." And then I had another friend who's he does cancer research, and he'd come back from something in Germany, and he was worried. And my friend is not an alarmist. He is not. He's not prone to panic. And I could tell he was like, "This is going to be very bad. My peers think this is going to be very bad." And then I have a cousin who's a nurse who said the same thing. I bring this up simply to think, I was thinking about information and how we get information.
Yeah.
And because I made decisions based not on my government, but on friends that I trusted. And this doctor on the news, like, it's so funny looking back on it, how if my friends had not come forward, if this comic book fan had not come forward and said, "This is going to be terrible," I'm not sure I would have prepared as well. So it just makes me think a lot about where we get our information. Because I certainly don't, I don't trust Donald Trump, nor do I trust his government, my government. And so it just makes me think a lot about where we get information and then what we do with it, like how trust occurs. And if I didn't know these people, I don't think I would have prepared as well.
Yeah, the question is, I don't think it's even where do we get the information from. The question these days, I think it's, do we really get information?
Oh, yes.
Because in many cases we don't. We just get somebody who's been bought by somebody else to tell their piece. It's like, okay, you gotta tell it from this side. Yeah, but that's not news. I'm paying you to say that.
Does that happen? Is there sort of a both sides streak in the news in Spain?
Oh yeah, you have the right wing. Of course, you have the right wing newspapers and the left wing newspapers and the right wing radio stations and the left wing. You have it, of course, and the center. You have a bit of both, a bit of all of them. So yeah, we have it all.
I guess my question specifically is so one of the things our news has suffered from tremendously is this need to treat multiple sides with equal weight.
Oh yeah, no, we don't have that.
Okay. I was going to say, it feels to me like Europeans are like, I know there's left and right clearly
Yeah.
in Europe and multiple, but one of the things that we have suffered from tremendously, and I know that from my friends who work in news, part of it comes from a desperate attempt not to seem biased, because
Yeah.
if they report the news, they will seem like they are biased. So they try to counterbalance just for appearances to, even though it is very harmful. But I wasn't sure if that was, and I'm thinking particularly about televised news as opposed to, I was just curious if there was a strain of that in Spain.
That is, I don't think so, because there's something that is called OK Diario here, that is could be the equivalent. It's press. It's a newspaper, the equivalent of Fox News in how they do things, and they are absolutely right wing,
Yeah.
ultra supporters, and they don't do news. They just do fake stuff, but they get sued and pay every week. It's like. I don't know who supports you guys, but they go to court and they lose every week. So, and that piece about Fox News, being allowed to lie, you can do it here. That's not
Right,
possible.
right.
Not just literally not possible. If you lie, you pay for it.
That's amazing.
So that's something that they can do. But by the end of the day, I keep thinking during these days, the COVID is. You can see even more clearly, and I guess that's the same in the US. You can see even more clearly who doesn't care about your safety.
Yes.
They only care about getting, their party in power, or they care about those guys. That my newspaper lives out of. Oh, I need the government from Madrid or Catalonia or Castilla or Galicia, whatever. They do campaigns, about whatever, save the environment, and those campaigns are ads. Full page ads on those newspapers. And many newspapers survive that money that comes from those governments. So of course, that newspaper is going to be softer when talking about that government, because it's like, when, okay, if this campaign to save the environment is in September, we are not going to talk badly about them in July and August.
Right, of course.
Then in October, no limits. But a month before, stop, don't risk it now.
It is amazing, as anyone watching can tell clearly, and anyone that has followed me on social media for years. Like, so I'm consumed by many things, particularly what is happening in the U.S. government, but also by the way we consume information and how we process information, and where we get it from. All of these things, I think about this. It has been my overarching, I don't know, interest, obsession, the past several years, but particularly the past 4 years.
Sometimes you don't you miss the quiet? I mean, to get those news and not be completely, absolutely bombarded every 5 seconds. I am not going to say I'm a caveman. Well, I'm a caveman, but I am not going to say it. But sometimes I keep thinking we were better without CNN and everything that came afterwards.
I have a friend that says everything was better in the 20th century. And it's funny because he works in advertising, and he was simply talking about, clearly it's sort of a romantic idea of the past, and he knows it. But he was thinking about how his industry has changed with social media, but also 1,000 channels, right? So the competition for attention, and the damage that has done to all of us, right? And so we joke a lot about the old days, and now we are of an age where that's what we think about. But I do believe, what you're talking about, the quiet, I miss a lot. And I've seen how it has affected me in the past 10 years, the lack of quiet. And I've allowed myself to be, I don't blame it entirely. Clearly, I've been full, with.
No, we are willing participators, so we cannot blame
absolutely.
anybody else. Absolutely.
So I never want to imply that I'm just some poor person roped along. I joined the party, and now there's some regret about that, or if nothing else, I want to go to the corner. I don't want to be in the middle of the party anymore. I want to. I think I want to leave. But that is, I absolutely think about this. I think about it also, and this is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about in educational terms, especially here in the United States, where one of the many horrors, or I don't even know if it's horrific anymore, is that with our 50 states, we don't have a single unified education curriculum. They are all state driven. And so the idea that Oklahoma can teach science and history differently than New York State blows my mind, because we don't have any sort of national standard. And so in terms of educating a populace, 30 million people, I think about this all the time. Like, how are we going to proceed with education? And what are we teaching young people? And how are we teaching them through all the noise? I think about this all the time. So as a dad, I wanted to ask you, like, how do you shield your daughter from the noise?
I don't. I just try to guide her, but you don't. The first thing to understand, the best way to understand reality is to live through it. So I don't shield her from the noise. I am not like Steve Jobs, who famously said, "Yeah, I created the iPad, but there's no iPads in my house."
Right.
Not until my kids are 16 or 17. I was reading that and I was thinking, that's a mistake. You're shielding your kids from the reality you created. There's a reality now. They have to live through it. You have to guide them, to teach them how to use it. What's the limits? What they should do? You know, Erin has our oldest, I think, is the iPad Mini, the first generation, and we gave it to her, and we let her use it. But we say, you have YouTube Kids. You have YouTube. Which is the one you're going to use? You can't use the other one. If I see you using the adult one, I'll take the iPad away from you. You got to know there's boundaries. So she's in YouTube Kids, and then suddenly there's one of those weird, where a dad literally uses the children to do YouTube videos and make a lot of money. It's like, you cannot do that. You cannot see that, because that father is not being a good father. He's using his children to make money. So it's guidance. We see somebody that's saying a thing that is a lie, a politician or somebody on TV, and she's going to ask, who's this guy? Why are you saying? Because, of course, we jump with Trump on TV or the right wing asks for here. We jump and say, fucking liar, not with the cursing, but we say it. Well, in my case, I curse. But and we explain that guy is a politician who's also a liar. You don't have to think that politicians are all liars or are all, in bad faith, but there is people, even there's politicians, who are in bad faith and who are liars. So I think from a parental point of view, hiding things is not the wise way to do. For me, the wise thing to do is to show them and teach through them. Explain, always explain, because many people, when their kids ask, and of course, it's a 6-year-old, Erin is a 6-year-old, and they keep asking all the time. And many times you are like, shoot myself, stop asking. It's why, what's this, what that? But then you stop and say, I need to use that opportunity, because every question she asks, I can show her and guide her, not push her to understanding like I do, but always, or like we do, but always try to say, this is a new thing for her to learn.
Right.
So for me, as a parent, it's never about hiding. It's always about trying to make her understand and to create her own thoughts about it.
What is interesting to me about that, which it's a perfect, beautiful answer, is I think part of my question is rooted in time.
Mm-hmm.
So the interesting thing to me about noise, right, is how much we are being bombarded with.
Oh, yeah.
And over the past several years, I've discovered, and I was never a great decision maker. One of the reasons I'm so slow is because I have that terrible, I don't know what the word would be in Spanish, but like analysis paralysis or choice paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
I can sit and look at 2 or 3 options for hours or days. I'm working on a double page spread and I have 2 versions of the same spread. And there are just a couple things that are different, but I like both of them so much. And I this is now day 2.5 where I cannot decide on the version. And so for me, the noise part of it is being bombarded with so many choices, I find is unhelpful for a brain like mine.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't, as I get older, my flight or what is it? Fight or flight response has become freeze,
mm-hmm.
right? I used to be so good and so on top of things, but now exposed to so much information without filters, I find I have a very hard time just deciding and moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Because I always have other voices in the, because, well, I saw this video and this could happen, but I read this article, so this might be a choice. Oh, and then I saw this movie, and so for the past several years, I get lost in decision making.
Yeah.
So what I was interested in with the noise was not shielding from information, but like how do you choose in a world of so much information? How do you teach a child to I guess, like, how do you guide them, right? Like to like, so when you have 1,000 choices, do you say go through each of them, or do you be like, listen, you have 10 minutes, here are your 3?
It's the option that can teach her more.
Yes. Okay. Perfect.
In a way,
you're a good dad.
Nah, well, I'm not. I'm just a guy who's trying to learn.
No, you're a good dad.
Thank you. But it's going to sound stupid. Sometimes the option that is going to help her to learn is to just for 15 minutes watching YouTube kids videos.
Yeah.
Because you need her to relax her head. To she's been working. She's just come from school. I could use there's a couple amazing apps on the iPad. What is called BMath, and the other one is Smartic, who are tools to learn. If I gave her that, the moment when she comes back from school, that's stupid because she's not going to learn because she's tired.
Right.
If her 15 minutes with the iPad to watch videos or to play, then, I just found this amazing game. That amazing game is a game that is something where you can learn from playing this game, but I'm not going to tell her that. And then she's like, she has two folders on the iPad with airing games, and the other one is airing learning games.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then I put that game, but I don't put it in the folder. I just let her play. And when she finishes, she's like, Dad, I think this game should go into the airing learning folder. So she realizes, but I want her to realize it. That's a learning game. Right. So she decides where to play. So many times guiding is knowing when is not the time to give her information, is just let her play. Or the moment where it's, okay, she's been playing, now is the time to go with the other kind of cartoons or with the other kind of game, right, or with the other, or just sitting down with me and, you're going to learn to read. She always reads before going to bed with Paloma or with me. And sometimes it's just about princesses, Disney princesses. Sometimes we have an amazing one that is small princesses can also, I think the translation in English could be small princesses also fart.
Yes.
And it's amazing. It's amazing. It's just a girl who farts literally, and she's in front of Daddy, and she's like, "Oh my God, Dad, I farted. I'm sorry." And her dad tells her stories about, Snow White or whoever you can imagine. They also farted. They didn't stop being princesses because they farted.
Right.
It's amazing because that's
wonderful.
That's reality. Like telling you to be special, you don't have to be pristine and all that. So whatever you can imagine. So and then the next one, yesterday she was reading books I have that is called Small Geniuses. that is a scientist here, that's also an illustrator who does books for kids about astronautics or genetics or etc. So yesterday she suddenly says, I want to see that one, the astronautics one. And she was telling me about how to get to the moon and asking me if this, let me show. This is the one she was seeing on that book. This is a reproduction of the Saturn V that got us to the moon. So she came from her room. It's like, Dad, is that the one that I was reading about in my story? And I was like, yeah. So they talk about the Saturn V in the children's book. So that's the thing, you know. I think it's, and I'm talking too much here.
No, I love this. No,
I think that's just about being able to learn as a dad. What's the best time for each thing, but always never pushing. Never pushing. Always just trying to. I'm going to give you the keys, and then you have to open the door. If you open the door yourself, you're gonna learn. If I force you to, like we did in the old days in school, you have to learn this lesson from the beginning to end, and then 2 days later you didn't remember shit about it because you didn't understand it. You have to just memorize it. I don't want to memorize anything. I want her to understand it. That's.
I was just telling a friend that when I had AP history in high school, to take the AP, I don't know if they have this equivalent in Spain, but it was an advanced placement class. And they were college level classes. And the idea was that you would take a test at the end. And then if you passed, you didn't have to take that class your freshman year, right? At university. So I took AP history. I wasn't great at it, but mostly because I didn't care. But I memorized my book before I went to the AP test and aced that AP test. And I remember even getting a call from my history teacher, like so impressed because I had not performed. I think I got a B in history. But I realized how little I actually learned. I just memorized for that test.
Yeah.
Like an actor cramming lines and they're out the door, out of the brain once the test is done. And I've been thinking a lot, again, clearly my mind is on many things, but about education, about history specifically, and critical thinking about history.
Yes.
When these ideas are introduced, how they're introduced. And I was trying to think like when I became a critical thinker about history. And interestingly, it was not as a teenager. I think it was later. And I've been thinking about education, not just for young people, but for adults as well, right? Like how to remind people, how to reintroduce these lessons when we have more of a life that we've lived, more of a context, right? Yep. So I've been thinking a lot about how to use comics and graphic novels as teaching tools, particularly, again, for history and civics. And I've been thinking about this for a long time. I think the past 4 years,
yeah, of course, that's a start. That makes a lot of sense. But let me take you back to what you said about using comics, because there's something special in comics that makes us it gives all of us readers a superpower. And I'm serious about this, and it makes us a much better critical thinkers than it does the average population, because the first thing we learn as comic readers and creators is to extrapolate from the things that we don't see.
Yes.
So we read between the gutters. We see Superman, and the next thing we see he's flying. We don't see all the way,
right?
Like in a storyboard. That's when somebody tries to do a movie and says, I'm going to base it on this comic book. No, storyboard is not that. The storyboard needs to cover all the fucking details. We cover the gaps in our brain. So I always say that us re-educate a comic reader is much easier because we've always learned to read between the panels. We read the news. We watch the news. And we always think what's behind it because we've been trained to read what's between the panels. We are not literal thinkers. We are exponential thinkers. We always have to jump and cover the gaps.
That's brilliant. Brilliant. Yes.
As a learning tool for somebody who doesn't read comics, or for somebody who reads comics, it's like, okay, your critical thinking should be based on your reading experience. If you're able to cover the gap from Wonder Woman taking her shield, and the next thing you see her with her sword and shield, yeah, already into action. If you're able to cover that leap, you should be able to think that what you have on the screen or in the newspaper, there's something else there.
Yes.
Always, always. And I think that ability we should use to help somebody else.
Again, another interest of mine for many, many years, and but it relates to this because I think, and part of this is comics and part of this is other things. Someone was a friend of mine who's learning how to write graphic novels and actually did it quite beautifully. Someone in entertainment was reading Scott McCloud's How to like Understanding Comics.
Yeah.
And one of the really interesting things about gutters, right, and filling in the space, is it really demands that the image before and after are just close enough where you can fill in the space, right? If they are too different or too disparate, it's too much of a leap, right? And so the beautiful science and chemistry of choosing just those right images to make this leap, I think is really extraordinary the way our brains work, right? Just how much information we need or don't to fill in the gap. But I have been very interested in recent years, and this goes back to you being a dad with a kid asking why, is the science of curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
So I read a newspaper article, probably in the New York Times, that said curiosity drives discovery. It drives people going to the moon, it drives science, it drives art, but we don't really know much about the science, like what's happening in our brain that makes us curious, and other people not curious at all. And
I think it's let me interrupt for a second. I think it's survival instinct.
Oh, okay.
That's what makes us curious. It's we're going back to I always tell same with comics. And again, sorry, I'm speaking too much today. See, that's the familiarity I have with film. This is like us talking about. We haven't talked in a year, so we have to talk.
Yes, this is the perfect conversation.
This is like the conversation we had in Argentina that
Yes.
ago. You, me, and Paloma just sitting down, and suddenly it's like, oh, it's 4 a.m.
Yes.
We've been 5 hours.
It's one of my favorite experiences of my life. Actually, I have such fond memories of that conversation.
Yeah. Anyway, and then you get to meet the best person in the world, who's my wife. But anyway,
this is true.
That's true. She is. Anyway, we were saying, I always say that we were cavemen, of course, blah, blah, blah. I still am. And in that time, you have to learn to survive. You have to be curious. You have to even risk that leaf, that piece of grass, whatever. I'm going to eat it. That mushroom, whatever. I'm going to eat it because I need to eat. And for like 5 days, 10 days, 15 days, whatever, we haven't found any, or we couldn't be able to kill any animals. So we have to eat whatever we find.
Right.
So curiosity is born out of necessity. And then pattern recognition gives you the other side, which is amazing also for comics, which is if that bush rustles, shit, maybe there's a tiger there. Or
right.
It's gonna kill me, run. And we still have it, in comics, it's amazing. You don't have to show everything. You just give a clue. Because your brain is going to fill in the rest.
Yes.
So that's the curiosity also comes from saving your life, saving others, and it became part of our DNA. So we are, and as Carl Sagan said, I am not, as I always say, people, I'm not religious, I'm Saganian, because my personal God is Carl Sagan. No, because I remember in Cosmos, him saying we are explorers, and will always be, because we need to find new things. It's in our DNA. We have to find things to survive, new places to hunt. But now for us is curiosity and finding and exploration. It's our DNA. It's who we are. So I think it's like everything in life. It's born out of necessity. Curiosity comes from that.
I do not disagree with a word you said. What's interesting to me, living in 2020 in the United States, which, until recently, was a pretty most middle class communities were quite stable, that stability, I think, prevents that necessity.
Yeah.
It doesn't demand curiosity.
Yes.
Because and so I've been very interested in how you cultivate curiosity when it's not there. Especially as we get older, like, and if you've lived a certain way for a really long time and you've never really been curious, you've never really cared, what gets you to care? What gets you? Because I was saying that throughout my entire life, I think one of my great drivers, I think one of my great strengths is I'm curious about everything, except for, hilariously, most organized sports. A few here and there. I cannot make that leap. I'm looking for my way into American football, but most things, from human behavior to how things work, to what things look like, to like how people eat around the world, like what they're like. I'm just interested. Like, I'm curious about that. What's interesting to me is when people are not, right? And like, what is the driver then in your life? If it isn't like passion about finding out all this other stuff, what makes you content with just being where you are? That sounds like judgment. It's just more, it's a different way of approaching the world. And I know for me that as I get older and I'm thinking like, what else do I have to contribute? A lot of what I'm interested in doing is cultivating curiosity in people that might not be curious.
Yeah.
And figuring out the path to do that. I have a really good friend who's delightful and hilarious and always the life of the party, not very curious about much except for where the wine is, right? And it's so interesting. That's a lie. That's not fair. They do enjoy, there's certain activities they enjoy that I actually think spark curiosity. But for the most part, they're just sort of going through the day. And on some level, I can't help but wonder if they're not also a little bit more joyous. Because one thing about learning, one thing about discovery is it can be as horrifying as it can be exhilarating, right? Like when, and so you have to have, at least I have to have a brain. I've been working on managing both. Because I'll read something and be like, this is extraordinary. The world needs to know this. And then I'll encounter something else and be like, this is horrifying. I don't know how to manage this.
Yeah. But in a way, there's the people who's not curious tends to be the people who's more afraid, and the people who's more judgmental or racist, and in many ways or xenophobic, is the people they just don't care about learning. They have their small space, and they just want to be in their space, and they feel threatened by everything else because they don't want to understand it. They don't care about understanding.
I would counter that I think some people, while they might be, are also pretty. I do believe in that term a little bit, that ignorance can be bliss.
I know there's hermits. There's hermits that just want to be disconnected from the world, reading their book, not TV, leave me alone. Of course, that's perfectly valuable, but I
don't think they're unhappy.
No, the hermits.
They're like, this is great. I'm totally good with this.
They're fine. They're like, where's my porn?
Yes, literally that. Yes.
But anyway, no. But I think that in many cases, the side of the hermits, there's the other side of it. Which there's the good side, which is being a hermit, being disconnected and happy with it, and there's the other side. I don't want to learn because learning is bad. That means everything that means learning is a risk. Is bad for humanity. I gotta learn that Jesus Christ wasn't white. Oh my God, you want to kill religions? Like, no, he wasn't white. I'm not saying anything. It's like, he lived in Palestine. In Palestine, they were not white.
Right.
And, every single movie you see or TV show with the white people in the Bible and all that. First, the Bible wasn't, it's a story. It's not history. It's just stories. But we're talking about those guys. They couldn't be white.
Random. Totally random. Have you heard about the Noah's Ark Museum in Kentucky here in the United States?
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard about it?
Yeah, the Noah's Ark?
The Noah's Ark Museum.
Yeah, I heard, yes.
Okay, so there's an amazing documentary on Amazon Prime called We Believe in Dinosaurs. And I just watched it because I'm a museum freak. I love them. And it's all about the creation of this life-size Noah's Ark in Kentucky. And what blows my mind about it is the amount of time, energy, and resources, $120 million, I think, to create this life-size ark and the museum within to prove that the world is 6,000 years old, that human beings lived with dinosaurs. There are dinosaurs on the ark.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's really, and it's actually quite beautiful, because what blew my mind, that according to this documentary, one of the ride designers from Universal Studios, a devout Christian, created many of the rides for this Noah's Ark. So I don't know if you've been to Universal Studios, but you know Jaws, they have the...
Yeah.
Yeah, he created the Jaws ride at Universal Studios, and then went on to create like animated dinosaurs in the Noah's Ark Museum. It's like, it's 1,000 things like in my head that I'm like, I can't believe this. My question is, and this again is my global ignorance, is there anything like that in Europe? Oh my gosh. Like
And we are talking.
I'm dying to go.
You're talking to a Spaniard, you know, Spanish Inquisition and all that. We're really close to Italy with Vatican and all that.
Oh, no, I know.
We don't have that. No.
Like I'm just...
They could be mercilessly made fun of, mercilessly by everybody in the country. Say 4 freaks. Everybody in the country. We go all there on a mission to just, you know, remember the Blues Brothers? We're on a mission from God.
Yes.
Our mission from God would be to go there just to make fun of it and take pictures.
What's interesting is that the guy that created it is from Australia. He's not American. Like the guy that spearheaded it is an Australian fundamentalist and came to America to make it, which just putting that out there. But it's I don't know where I'm going with this, except for it is worth watching because it is stunning how they created something quite amazing.
Yeah.
That does nothing but perpetuate. I mean, it's a belief system, but it's not real or true. Like it's really extraordinary. Like yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that, except for something you just said about, oh, I know, Jesus being white, right?
Yeah. It's the make-believe situation. It's like I'm going to present you reality or say reality is this when it's really not. But by the end of the day, I always say the same thing. They fight back so much because they know they've lost. You know, you can't stop the future. You just can't. You can delay it. You can stall it, but you can stop it.
I agree. I think certainly in the United States, I do not underestimate. While I believe what you're saying, I do not underestimate in the near term their power.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah, they have an enormous amount of energy and will right now, which I think is dwindling, but is still something to be reckoned with.
No, absolutely. That's why I say they can stall it, they can fight it, but they can stop the future. It'll take longer. You know, I was coming back to Spain, you know, Spanish Inquisition, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
The power of the church was huge here. You know what? They lost it. Sooner or later, you lose it.
Yes.
Because same with France, you know, their case was, the guillotine was, you know, a little more extreme, you know. They went from cutting cheese to cutting heads,
Yeah.
you know. But it happened, you know, and they're now a non-religious republic. It takes time, but they can stop the future. And to go back to comics, that's the same thing. Every time I hear somebody saying, oh, comics shouldn't be about politics, they shouldn't talk politics, I go and get my book of my copy of the Hero Initiative, the Stan box, and say, Stan in 67, Stan in 63. It's like, no, politics my ass. Comics have always been politics, as every form of art. You just don't want to hear the politics you don't like, which is not the same.
It's that. Well, so I have 2 quick questions about that. But one, it is interesting to me that people assume comic books or entertainment are made without an agenda. Because of course it's made with an agenda. You may agree with it or not, but it's strange to me that people think it is neutral in any way, especially knowing so many creators. But here's my question to you. From a European perspective, in your head, what is the near future of American comic books and publishing?
I think they need to change in two ways. And I've told this to the guys in charge, as you well know. I don't get quiet even underwater. Anyway, I think they had got to change two ways. One of them, I believe monthly should continue, but they should become what they were years ago in terms of there's been too many ongoings with feelings and 3-4 creative teams. I think that the artist should become what it was 10-15 years ago. They have to give the artist the space to do 10-12 issues a year. So the way they do things has to change for avoiding it's not literal, but you know what I mean, going back to the writer dictatorship.
Sure.
And I don't mean that the writer wants to be. I mean that you only talk about the writer because the writer is there every single issue and the artist is just there for 4 issues. So I think there's got to be a change in that sense, which is, okay, we're going to find a way to make the monthly artist stay in the book for more months, which is working ahead, working with advances. It's got to change. I'm not saying doing it the European way, but there's got to be a way for that to happen. And also for artists like you who take more time to do the work in different formats, like what you're doing with Editorial now. It's like, okay, we have to cap 2 groups of artists. The artists that need more time have to keep them in special projects. The special projects stop being called, and they need to be stop being called special projects.
Oh,
they
right.
need to happen every time. But okay, this kind of artist is going to work here. This kind of artist is going to work there. It can also be, and this, I don't plan this to sound bad, but it's like you have the monthlies for the guys who are like in their 20s, just starting that, and then the people who's older, who take more time, not because they're older, but because in a way you are a lot wiser and work in a different. What?
We are also just older.
Yeah, that. Shut up.
No, I'm just saying.
I know it's because you're older, but it's also being older as an artist also mean question things a lot more.
Yeah.
Because you know a lot more. So of course you're gonna question it a lot more. So by the end of the day, it takes you more time because the process, your brain is wired in a different way. You just don't go, I need to deliver, boom. I need to deliver, boom. When you're 40, 45, you don't think that way. You think, I know I need to deliver, but there's a better way. And I'm gonna find it. So the path for solutions is more convoluted when you're older. It's in life as in is in art, So I think this gotta change in that sense of going back to find a way to get the monthly artists to be really monthly or almost monthly, and then finding a way for artists who are older or literally take more time, even being 20, 25, to do their work, to find a venue for them.
Yeah.
And if that venue is your books, saying Brian Boland because I'm saying Brian Boland, or any other artist that takes longer, saying, okay, these books are not going for the direct market. These books are going to another market, to the book market, and then we can go back and have those books in the direct market when it's done. But the first place to sell it shouldn't be the direct market because it takes more time for you to do it. So it's got to be devoted for that other market first, or at the same time with I don't care. You can do it for direct market at the same time if you want, but it's got to be thought out as a book.
One of my great regrets with Historia is I told them, so when we were asked to do it, there was not a word written, there was no art. They asked us a couple of weeks before, and I said, whatever you do, do not announce this book until we've started. And then I did one sample page. They loved it. And I think they announced it, literally, I think the week after our contracts were signed or something. So we were suddenly like, we're not even starting for like 3 months from now. But it looked like we had been working on it.
Yeah.
When we had just said yes, like the week before, right? But it was that machine that needed to keep going. And I was, from that moment, I probably spent months in panic because I was learning how to draw on an iPad, because the scale of this project was so large, because I knew what I wanted it to look like. And the only thing I said was, don't put it on deadline. They've been very good about that. They haven't scheduled it. I said, but they threw me off by months. And that's unfair. My editor has been extraordinary. I'm talking about DC Comics, not my editor has been nothing but good to me. They were trying to get it out as fast as they could. And I told them before we started, this is not going to happen. This is going to take a long time. This will not, if you want it fast, don't hire me. And they're like, yeah, no problem. And then a week later they announced it and they're like, okay, where are the pages?
Yeah.
And it was such I was amazed at how that, and then they wanted more. They were trying to schedule like 3 books in the same, like, I bring this up simply to say I got really anxious about it. It did not speed me up. It slowed me down because
because you're entering a panic state that never speeds you up.
Do this at the rate that they want. And we talked about this. I was like, I would never have taken the job had I known how fast they wanted it, right? Because I don't like to fuck anyone over. I don't want to screw anyone over. And I had been sort of backing out of this kind of mainstream comic world because I know I can't generate that quickly. All of that is to say, it is nice to hear this idea. And I will be curious with the new leadership how, at least at DC Comics, how they will manage the speed of different artists, right? Like, as I'm wrapping up on Historia, and again, it's literally the most beautiful thing I've ever done. But I think about like the 6 months of time I lost just panicking because they kept wanting to get it on the schedule. And it was just such a shame, right? Like, because I feel like had I not had to worry about that, had they just said, go make your book, come back to us, and, we would have been like, awesome. But instead it was this constant, like, juggle. And it also makes me think, I'm glad I don't have publishing overlords, like, to work. Like, I don't have to answer to quarterly reports. To make decisions like that, right? Like, but anyway, that's a rambling thing. But it's interesting to hear you talk about divisions of labor.
Yeah,
there are some people that are making beautiful monthly comics right now, and I'm like, God bless you.
Yeah, it's different tires. It's why can't you have different tires of publication?
Yeah,
for the same market or for the different markets. I don't care. But if this artist is going to be good, but it's going to take this long, do you want to lose the artist because he cannot do monthlies? No.
Right.
So start creating for them. But if the answer is, and I know the answer is, oh, we tried G1, that is, and except for Wonder Woman, nothing worked. I'm like, okay, so if you know that the problem is the market where you try to sell it, maybe you should try to sell it to a different one.
Yes.
Stop trying to sell big books to the direct market like that, because maybe it's not. And I don't blame the comic shop owners. Maybe for the comic shop owner, that volume doesn't make him that much money as a monthly does, and I don't blame him. But in a bookstore like a Fnac, as you know, we have here and in France, you go to Fnac. Believe me, Fnac is going to want that book because of the different audience. Or Barnes & Noble or whoever, they want the big books. They don't care about the monthlies. Right. So if you tell them this is not a reprint, this is original material, that's what they want. So the different tires doesn't mean you respect the artist more or less, or that they are in a more respected or less respected. It's just, I am adapting you to the market that you are good for. That's never a bad thing.
No, I agree. Another random question, and it's comic book related, but I think about this a lot as we've gotten older. You're a dad, and I think so much about nostalgia and looking back and looking at characters that we loved 20, 30 years ago. Is there a character or a book that still brings you great joy to look at? or read? Like when you see an image, are you like, does it make you smile inside still?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The first that comes to mind is Arthur Adams' Longshot.
Oh yeah, okay.
That's the first that pops into my head. Because I remember I was stopping reading comics, and because I was literally getting bored, and I saw that, and it was so different. Arthur was so different then that I was like, "Whoa, shit, what's this?" And it took me back. And from that, I went to see his X-Men annuals, and it took me back to the X-Men.
Right.
So it took me back to comics. So that was that is one that I still look at, and I think two things. One is the Impossible, which is like I would kill to have an original page of that,
Yes.
which is the never ever in the history of the fucking universe going to happen, because I can imagine one page of that is like $1 million. And the second thing is that I still remember when I watched this and I thought, this is a game changer. This is I'm interested on, because it's different. It's not what I've been reading.
Live streaming is on.
Sorry, guys. As you see, YouTube again every hour. We're back.
Sorry.
We're back. Yes, YouTube. You have a lot of money. This shouldn't happen. You Google, idiots. Anyway, we're saying, yeah, that could be Long Shot, and also you're not going to believe this. Steranko's Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Why wouldn't I believe that?
Because he's much older than me.
Oh. Okay.
I read it a lot later in life, but for me that was, how can I say it? Probably the first time when I read a comic and said, this has no limits. The language has no limits, which is something I will talk to you when we finally start talking about comics. That's the part that I love more about comics. Is the only art form that has no limits.
Right.
The only limits is us.
I actually have a counter to that.
Okay.
Okay, ready? I don't know if it's a limit.
I have my baseball bat. Draw the ball.
Comic books are a silent medium.
Uh-huh.
And so its limit, I think, has to do with sound. So
Nope.
while you can read, no, I was going to say, well, you can read an effect or you can hear it in your brain. I find, for example, that I do not respond to horror comics for a primary reason, because watching a horror film, for example, I find how much sound affects me in terms of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And reading a comic book, when I read a sound effect, it does not have the same impact on me as actually hearing a sound. That said, I don't know if it's a limit, but I do think
I can counter that whenever
Okay.
you want. You keep going, but I can
No.
counter.
Tell me.
Think about colors as sounds.
Here's the thing. I get it.
The colors.
It's a very
colors are sounds.
you're going full Kandinsky. I totally get it. I understand the idea. I'm just saying that for me, it has not yet been effective.
Uh-huh.
Which isn't just so. What I should go back and say is, it's probably my limit, not the medium's limit. But
Yeah.
I do find that when sound becomes important, like for example, when the comic is about a band or about musicians, I always find it a little difficult because you can't hear their music. You have to sort of invent it in your head.
Yes, you need to have heard it. You know, it's you to appreciate Mike Allred's book about David Bowie, which is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
You need to have learned, listen to the music.
Right.
Because if not, there's a disconnection. Yeah, you can read the lyrics and say, "Oh, they are beautiful," but without the music that accompany those lyrics, there's no emotion.
So if I may get nerdy, I've always thought that one of the big problems with Dazzler, the character, is that she absorbs sound, right? So, but there is no sound in comic. You have to, so people like that's really lame. But I remember reading a caption in one comic, it was a Claremont caption, where she was on a motorcycle, but she was absorbing the sound of the motorcycle. So it was like a stealth vehicle. And I was like, that is the most fucking brilliant. Like, it never occurred to me, right? I was like, oh my God, if she's constantly, like, there's constant cone of silence around her.
Yeah.
If she wants to. So, like, she's like the perfect spy, thief, stealth person because she can't hear her because
Yeah.
she's absorbing the sound. But for some reason, I had
wait, that's brilliant.
Isn't
You
it?
It's absolutely brilliant. You just thought about something that nobody. You have to do this. That's something that nobody else has done, which is Dazzler as the master spy.
Right, because like she's walking around, no one can hear her.
Yeah.
Right, like if she's absorbing the sound. But that was a Claremont idea, and it was in some throwaway caption, like
yeah, but it was never used.
It was never used. It reminds you a little bit of like when Grant Morrison, when he was on Justice League, JLA, and he would throw away. Oh, one of my favorite things was when Aquaman used his telepathy on like the lizard parts of like someone's brain.
Yeah.
Or like the unevolved parts of the brain, and like I'm like, why isn't he doing that in every issue from now on? It was like a brilliant read of that power. Anyway, but going back to comics, I've been thinking. I just had this conversation with my writing group about color and sound.
Yeah.
And how important it is. For me, it's a limit for me, in that I have yet to figure out a way to create sound effects that impact me the way real sound does.
I believe that sound effects are a lot less valuable than the use of color.
Yes, I think you're right.
We're going primary again, and I love sound effects and amazing and guys like John Workman and all those, and Todd Klein, you're masters. I'm not saying anything against letters and sound effects, but I'm saying that if you want primary reaction, you need to use color.
Yes, of course.
No sound effect can give you a scare like a splash of red.
And that's what makes me crazy about, and I could be being unfair to many editors working right now, but there was a lot of pushback in recent years in mainstream superhero comics about using color to tell story.
Yeah.
There's all this like kind of real color, right?
Yeah.
Which not only created like kind of a blah palette, but color is so powerful to do exactly what you're talking about. And to not use it more effectively has always distressed me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Color has been such an integral part of European comics as a storytelling device that anytime I see, and I've had really big arguments with editors and the guys above them who gives these fucking rulings about that says nothing. Like, but that's what they want. How can you want the edit colors to say nothing? How can you? Because that's easier to read. No, that's a lie. It's not easier to read. It makes it more difficult because if everything is flat, there's no emotion.
Right.
If there's no different values, there is no reaction. There cannot be. But if you use the primer colors effectively, that's why flat colors in many occasions work better because they're primal. And if they go to your primal centers of your brain, to your reactions, they make you feel. So not using color as a storytelling tool or lettering also, for me, it's like, why do you have them? It's an integral part of comics. We need to use them.
Oh, I could go on about this for hours. And it's funny, the thing about lettering is even when I was 14 or 15, if I didn't like the lettering, I couldn't read the comic.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about one letterer in particular who lettered a book and I was just like, I'll never be able to read this. Even back then, I was aware of the impact of lettering on a book, right? Like, and it's one of those things I get very persnickety about now.
Mm-hmm.
is the font, is like literally what the lettering looks like. Because if it's weird or off, I'll never be able to read it.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people are like that, but for me, it's a real barrier to entry.
Let me say it this way: for many people, it's unconscious, but it is unconscious.
Yes.
They don't realize they don't like it because of the lettering, but they don't, and they tell you by the end, "I didn't like this story." And like, when did you start realizing it? Oh, first page, and you're like, "Okay, the lettering is there."
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think you're 100% correct. Yes.
because the unconscious part is what makes comics. We were again going back to alliteration, jumping the wind between the gutters. The unconscious thing is the most essential part of comics. So anything that doesn't work, doesn't click, as we said before, you read between the panels.
Right.
So everything that doesn't click subconsciously is going to attack you. As I said, the colors being so flat, it takes you out, because you are not thrown into the 2D world and made into a 3D world.
Right.
It goes back to you. You go should enter 2D, and the color and the art should make it 3D for you. If you are thrown back at 2D, you're out.
Right.
If the same thing with the lettering. Maybe you are not conscious about, Jesus Christ, I don't like this lettering. But you are by the end of page 1, you are so uncomfortable that you're not going to like the book.
Yep.
Because it's throwing you away.
So going back to color for a minute, and just the way people react to it. So the first color was coming in on Historia, and the colorist is Romulo Fajardo, who I've been working with forever. He's in the Philippines. Delightful. And the first version was like painted color, and the color choices were actually amazing, but it was all like dialed up to 11.
Yeah.
And so I had to talk to him about keep this, but dial this back. And I would prefer, quite frankly, people throwing everything at it and then pulling back.
Yeah.
I think that is easier than being very safe and then trying to pull out. But it was funny. I showed a couple versions to this writing group that I keep talking about. And one who's a regular in comics understood the version I wanted, which was some was up, but some was pulled back. It was not all like this. But the folks who didn't work in comics loved this one. And I thought, because for them it was exciting. It was just like, it was flashy.
Yes.
And it really did make me, I was very interested in how everyone read this color. And they're from they're all in entertainment, but they work in different fields.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so interesting to me, how their backgrounds, it felt like, I don't know if it's true, affected how they read the color. So anyway.
No, because in a way, if it's really flashy, of course it takes you in like, oh my God. But then on page 4, you're tired.
Yes. And
because so much, you're like, your brain is exploding.
100%. There's no mood. There's no tone. I mean, it looks like, exactly that. You're like, holy shit, this is so exciting. But then you realize exactly what you just said. Like page 8, you're like, oh my God, I can't read this.
I can't take it anymore. Yeah, of course. And you just close it. But if there's nuances, the moment where you make that big flashy color, you're like, oh shit, this is amazing.
Right.
Because you make the difference. You can't read the difference between one and the other. If it's all flat or it's all flashy, it doesn't work. It's gotta.
Yes.
Imagine an amazing DP in a movie saying, "Nah, it's all gotta look the same. It's gotta be all flashy." You like 10 minutes, you want to kill yourself.
Random. I don't know where this comes from. It's a strange segue, but it has to do with Flash. Do you watch The Boys?
Yes.
Do you like it?
No.
Oh, you don't?
So Paloma loves it. I like. I'm not like. Let me correct. Let me correct myself. I am not liking season 2.
Okay, I've heard some people say that.
I like season 1. It's not because they're doing it in separate, each week an episode and not binge watching. I don't give a shit about that. Is that I think the second season is being a bit too self-conscious and a bit too slow in what they want to tell. But anyway, I love the concept and I love the book and I love Garth. So yeah, I love the Boys.
Oh, it's very interesting because I love season 1 so much. I actually like the stuff I love about season 2. I really love about season 2. I don't know something you just said made me. I was thinking about Flash and whatever emotional reaction, I think, to stuff. Yeah, I don't even remember why I brought it up. I think I was just curious about your take on it. Because one of the things I was thinking about you over the 20 plus years I've known you, I think you are a very astute critic. And I think one of the things I really, let me tell you why. Because you are approaching things with critical, because you can describe what it is you are responding to, right? And so one thing I find very frustrating with people who read things casually or consume things casually is that their criticisms are also casual. I like it, I didn't like it, it was good, it was bad. Very rarely can they articulate why or not, right?
Yeah.
And not everyone cares the same way. But one of the things I've always loved about you is that you can parse information. Because I'll stop here. Like, not your criticism is deeper than most. It is thoughtful. It is considered, and I think for many people that is not always the case.
No, that's why it's impossible to watch a movie with me.
Oh, same here.
Because I'm going to rewind 35 seconds and stop and analyze and stop. And Paloma, I cannot watch a movie with you. Like, I know, but it's my obsession with finding the smallest grain of salt and explain it. That's part of it.
So it's interesting because I can't, on every movie I will watch, I don't do that until the second time.
Oh, me too, of course. No,
first time. I will watch a movie and just take it in. And it's funny because I get even comedies, I get very serious while I'm watching them. And then I go back and then I start to sort of pick apart. But the first viewing, I will always watch. And Joe loves pausing. That guy will and he's like, what did they say? What? And for me, the disruption is on the first viewing is too much. I can't do it. Anytime after, I don't care. And also, I mean, he's interesting because he will catch little things too that I would have missed on my first viewing. Because I'm interested in different things. Anyway, but all of that is, I love that. Mm-hmm. Because also I think at the deepest level, it means you care.
Yes.
Right? Like it means it's something that is important to you and that you care enough to think deeply about it.
But that's again, for you and for me, I think, and many other people, it's about our perennial curiosity. You can't stop being curious. So for me, it's not even critical thinking or critical explaining. It's just my obsessive look for finding solutions. So it's never about, I always tell to Paloma, we're talking about the problem, and I always try to explain it's never about the problem. Don't talk to me about the problem. Let's talk about the solution.
Right.
Let's talk about the explanation. And never about the symptom, but about the root. How did we get here? Not why are we here?
Well, that I would say, whenever I stumble onto something, I'm like, why did they make that? I'm dying to know why they made a certain choice. So I just rewatched Prometheus and Alien Covenant. Yes. And the thing that struck me is, so one thing that I hate in movies, comics, any sort of storytelling is when I have to stop and go, why did they do that?
Yes.
Right? And I don't mean the characters, I mean why were those choices made, right? That's interesting. And I've certainly done plenty of that myself, where you can feel the construction of the story, right? Like, because I made a bad choice or an editor said put this character in, it doesn't really make sense. And so I know that all sorts of stuff goes into making a story. But I'm all like, watching those two movies, I was like, the whole time I'm like, why did they do that? Well, it was the number of times I asked why. And of course, you can come up with a million solutions, but I really would love to have talked to some of the creators. And
don't you know what happened with that movie and the scripts and all that? Because it's published. There's a story about that.
About Prometheus?
Yeah.
I do. I mean, I do, but like, I think what.
Do you know about the two scripts and all that?
Yes, I do.
Because that's amazing. Like, oh, there's two scripts. Oh, they have no relation with each other. I don't care. I'm really Scott. I'm just going to shoot whatever I love from them. Like, but really doesn't work, because this is scene you're saying they're the most clever prepared guys in the world, and it's just they're all stupid.
Right.
Like, yeah, I don't care. It looks good.
I mean, and even that, I'm like, that is amazing to me, right? Like that is because the other thing I think a lot about, and going back to fandom and comic books, right? And this is very common, but so much of fandom is rooted in the belief that all choice making is as thoughtful as theirs, right? That the creators are thinking about it as deeply as they are.
Yeah.
And they're often shocked when decisions are made so casually or without consider. Oh, well, I did it because it looked good. But wait a minute, but that destroys everything that came before. I know, but like it was pretty. Like
yeah, but I'm Ridley Scott, and I'm my biggest as my balls, and that's why I always say Ridley Scott needs a producer.
Yes, 100%.
You see The Martian, people is like, see, he has a really good movie. Yeah, he wasn't in control.
Right. But it is fascinating to me how decision making on that scale with so much money is made. But also, again, just a reminder, like I think about this a lot. I had a former student who is one of my favorite people, was obsessed with, really loves Wonder Woman, had all these questions about my Wonder Woman run, which are questions I had because so many of the choices I made were editorial. They were not my creative choices. I kind of had to. And I tried to, okay, like if I have to do it, this is the best I can manage it on a monthly schedule. And he would say, why was this way? And maybe to defend my honor a little bit, but I'd be like, well, because they made me. Well, and then he would explain to me why it was wrong. And I would be like, I know why it's wrong.
Of course I know.
I don't disagree with you. But it was my job to do this, and they told me I had to do it this way, and it really was just like flummoxing to him that decisions could be made that way. I was like, trust me, I have a career full of them, right?
Oh yes, yeah.
Why did this come out this way? Well, because they made me. Yep. And if I wanted that paycheck, and if I wanted to work, I had to absorb it, right? But anyway, I think a lot about creative decisions and how I think about them with such, this is not to toot my horn, but I think about them long term. Like if we make this decision, this will happen from a story, like this will be a ripple effect. And so many people don't. And particularly the creative heads in our business who make decisions based on the needs of the day or that third quarterly report.
Yeah, the machine needs to keep cranking.
Yeah. And going back to what you were talking about old school runs, where I don't think or maybe it was, and I'm just, I am romanticizing it, but it felt like decision making was made a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
And at least certain creators understood long term that if they did something here, that will affect something here.
But there was also something really important about that many people doesn't remember, that many, if not most, creators were also the editors.
Yes.
Marv was editing Teen Titans
right
at the same time he was doing it. Jerry Conway, or all that Marvel 70s era before Jim Shooter came in and rolled them in big brackets. Everybody who was writing was also editing their books.
Yes.
So of course they were conscious about the run because they were in control of the run. And Stan was there, but he wasn't really there. He was there, but he was thinking about moving to LA, and he was literally saying, "Yeah, whatever Roy says." And Roy was like, "Whatever you guys want to do."
Right.
So then he moved to LA, and then chaos erupted in Marvel until they needed Jim Shooter to make it all work, whatever. But most editors were also the writers, so in a way, it was much easier for them to control the destiny and to control what was going to happen in 2-3 years on that book.
Right. So I remain really fascinated by that component of our of storytelling and entertainment, right? Like the folks who think about that stuff and then the folks who don't.
Yeah.
And then of course the consumers who care about it and the consumers who don't.
Well, of course, but you have the consumer who just wants to be entertained, and you have the other reader who wants to be challenged.
Right.
And there's gonna be a way for everybody. Same thing. You have people who wants to watch David Lynch, Peter Greenaway, or Denis Villeneuve, and the guy who just says, "I just want to watch Michael Bay."
Yeah.
And I am not going to mention Spielberg because he's in the middle of both categories, which
Agreed.
is probably what makes him so special. Because he can move between both worlds. Or people who says, "I hate Christopher Nolan because that's tedious or whatever," and the other group who says, "I love him because he has the balls to try it, even if it doesn't work." That's what I love about Christopher Nolan. Maybe it doesn't work for you on Tenet or the other movies, but at least he tries.
Did you see Tenet?
Yeah.
Because I did not. And did you like it?
I loved it.
Okay.
I loved it. And I know a lot of people hate it, but that's why I keep telling, if you don't like Christopher Nolan, don't waste the time. Because it's Christopher Nolan,
on steroids.
Doing what he loves, but without an excuse. Inception is, I'm going to use Dream as an excuse to tell this story. And Dunkirk was, I'm going to use this. In Tenet, it's like, I'm just going to say it. I'm going to tell a story about time. I'm not going to say anything else because any other word I use is spoiler. About time without anything to mask it. So I love him because the guy has the ambition and the balls to just say, you give me the money, I'm going to tell it my way. If you don't like it, fuck you.
Right.
But same thing with comics. Some readers want to be challenged, some readers would just want to be entertained. And this takes me to a question. You have the tools. You have I keep repeating, sorry guys, I always say sorry because I repeat this in every show. I think comics is the only art that can defy the theory of relativity. Because we control time and space from the first corner of the first page to the last one. Everything is under our control. You can have 20 pages in a single panel. You can jump back and forth. You can have, always saying that, again, sorry guys, I always use the same example. You have first issue of Watchmen, Laurie's in the background. We don't make anything out of it. Issue 5, we see her in the foreground. And they literally just told us without a word, oh, so this is happening at the same time, exactly at the same moment. And now it's her perspective.
Right.
So the use of time and space is something that I don't think any other art can manage like comics do. And you've worked with Grant, so you know how he does use that, or Alan, how he did use it. And how was it for you on the other side as a creator, as an artist, to think about, to challenge yourself as an artist to like, okay, this is not just pure, we tell the story as entertainers. We're trying to go deeper into the language and to go further. For you, did you even think about it, or just you were just involved and work on it?
Two answers. I did not think about it for two reasons. I was too young. When I did Invisibles, I was 26 or 27. I was not thinking so academically about the work. I was still in sort of unfortunately, Grant was notorious because he was traveling the world at the time. So he was notoriously late with scripts, and like I would get a faxed page of script or a faxed page of 2 pages of script with not much context, and I would just have to draw it. Occasionally we would get more. To be fair, trying to be fair to him, I would give my right arm to work with Grant again now, knowing what I know. So, for example. This is a very, very interesting thing, but it literally has to do with depth of knowledge. When I took over the book and we had Lord Fanny as a character, so one of my goals was, quite frankly, to pretty up the Invisibles, to make them more accessible to American readers, which at 27, I totally get. At 50, I'm like, that was the worst fucking idea ever, right? Like, it was my understanding now, for example, in terms of Lord Fanny, of drag, of transness, of all, is so much more expansive.
Yeah,
I would have approached that character so differently. I think I would approach the visuals of all those characters also just as a technical aside. The things that are available to us now, like through Procreate or Photoshop, there are things that I could have done now
Yeah.
that I could not have done then that I think would have affected the work. But I would fucking give money to go back to those characters, knowing what I do now. And I don't know if I would rework that, but to work with Grant again, because I feel like my worldview is so expansive and so much bigger, and I think about comics in a different way. I think about exactly what you're talking, like the way time and space works in comics. I know more, and so I could bring that to the work.
Yeah.
As long as he had a full script, because a lot of my career, when I'm not writing for myself, I get little chunks.
Yes.
Warren, who I still wrote me my best scripts, would send me a fax page a day, and I would have no idea what was on the next page. And it's just a hard way to work.
Yeah.
So you can't think academically when you're just like, I got to get this page. I don't know what's happening on the next page.
Yeah, because many times that page could be affected by what you see on page 20.
100%. So anyway, all that is to say, I think my three favorite writers I've ever worked with are Grant Morrison, Warren Ellis, and Kelly Sue. The thing I love about Kelly Sue that I keep saying, the lesson that she can teach, and it is not bullshit, is she is so emotionally evocative on the page. There's very little direction, but I know what every character is thinking. I know how they stand. I know it's all emotional information. And and part of that's because I've communicated with her more than any other writer. We talk a lot, which I never really used to talk to Grant except for conventions. He would just send me stuff and I would draw it. But the lessons that I've learned from each of them, I've learned from no other writers. Each one has the skill that speaks to me in such a unique way. And I would use their scripts to teach other writers and to train other artists, because each of them does certain things magnificently.
I don't think Grant would be against working with you again. I think he would be very much in favor of working with you again. I had him a month ago for more than 2 hours, and of course we were 2 hours. We're talking about the time and space and concept.
Yes, which I fucking love.
So it was, and then I'm really happy to say that afterwards he sent me an email saying, probably the first time in years where I'm talking to somebody about the things that I like and not about the same usual questions.
Right.
And I'm like, well, because this is not an interview. This is me talking to my friend about what we like to talk about, Grant. So we talked about what we could be talking in a coffee shop or in a bar,
right,
about time and space and the madness that is being a manipulator in comics.
Yes. And the thing that blows my mind about Grant is 5 fucking years later, he still knows how to do that in like, it is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
That has never ended, right? 35 years later, he's still doing this shit with this medium that blows my mind. And
yeah.
Yes, I cannot sing his praises loud enough for doing that.
I think it's in part is because of how much he challenges himself. It was really funny to talk to Vince, to Frank Whiteley. And exactly the week later, one Friday was Frank, and the week later it was Grant. And to see their perspective from one side to the other. Frank telling me, now when he talked to me about We Three, like, dogs with helmets? Like, I told Grant, I don't want to do that. And then Grant tells you, and he tells you, well, but then Grant told me, we're going to do a comic that is all viewed in 360. And you are like, wait, what? 360 degrees, all of it? And then Bean says, because that's how Bean is like, that I want to do. And then Grant is, that I want to do, because they keep challenging each other. So right. I think for Grant, in a way, it's got to be that. I got to keep challenging myself, and my artist, because I think he could be bored if not.
I think he would be bored out of his mind. One thing I will say to that, though, my favorite Grant Morrison work, like the stuff that speaks to me, is the stuff that spoke to him emotionally. And I think that's just my personality. But I would say that Animal Man is it number 6 with Dolphin? Even talking about it makes me tear up.
Yeah.
Or We Three, or the stuff that I find, because I approach Grant's work a couple of ways. One is just like academic. It's almost academically. It's like this is such. It is so really like beyond he's figuring out ways to use the medium, as you were describing, in ways unlike any other I would say writer I have encountered, and I have a fairly limited scope, but the way so my interest in it is intellectual or academic, but the stuff that touches me when it's personal work for him is also, that's what I would love to do. It's not just like, because I think there are going to be other people that will bend time and space on pages better than I will. But if he was to write like a Dolphin story like that, I think I would do it for free or very little, because that to me, like, that stuff has lingered with me for 30 plus years. Like, and that's when he shares, like, one of my favorite Grant stories, and I haven't seen him for years, but God, we were at Marvel or something like that. And it was, he was crossing the street with Kristen and he held her hand. He just grabbed her hand and he held it and it was the sweetest, most human moment. And there was another time years later where he was signing in Los Angeles and I happened to be there, and he was talking to someone literally about the way the universe works. And I walked up behind him and he got so excited like a little boy, right? And we suddenly had this very sweet exchange that had nothing to do with quantum physics. It was just like, and that, I know it sounds crazy, it's my favorite Grant Morrison. I agree. Who grabs like the hand of his girlfriend across the street, or gets excited like a little boy, or will write that Dolphin story. Like, that to me is like, if I could work with that Grant, I would.
My favorite Grant moment is Glasgow. Paloma and myself went there to spend New Year's Eve, I think, or something like that. And we saw Frank, and then one night said, let's get together with Kristen and Grant and let's all go to dinner. So we went to a mansion, or whatever you're gonna call it. We went there, we picked them, we went to a restaurant. And for the first few minutes, he was in shy mode, I would say, very quiet. But suddenly we started talking about music, and I made a joke about the Smiths. They're like, they suck. And reaction. And then from that moment, it opened and it was all about music, and we couldn't stop talking about music for hours. And that's my fondest memory. I love Grant, but the human side, just talking about, and I love talking to him about time and space, quantum physics, relativity, and all that. I love it because I'm crazy about that stuff. And astrophysics is my go-to thing. But those moments where we are just talking about, this is what you like, this is what I like, let's talk about it. How music touches you. For me, that's the fondest memory.
Right. One interesting, I do remember the only argument I ever had with Grant, and it's interesting to particularly now, I think, with the political climate of the US, is his take on Boy of the Invisibles, the Black woman in the Invisibles, and her relationship with Jack Frost. Which I would love to talk to him about now, because I remember thinking, like, I don't buy this. I don't buy this relationship. And I had to draw it. And I had to figure out a way into this relationship. And it was based on living in New York, like not far from Harlem. I'm like, I don't know. I don't get it. And we had a really interesting exchange that to this day, I will, like, his description was both troubling and fascinating. And I loved that conversation so much. I don't know where I'm going with that, except for it was the one time I remember disagreeing with Grant Morrison.
Okay.
Like, because usually I'm just like, tell me, like, usually I find my engagements with him were just literally mind-blowing, educational, etc. And this is the one time it's like, I don't think you're correct on this. And I'm not going to fix it, and I don't really care. It's not my project. Like, they're not my characters. But I remember that conversation. Regardless, what he does in our medium, again, playing again with things that you're talking about, time, space, literally is magnificent.
Mm-hmm. And do you agree that there's no limits in terms of how we can use time, space, and anything else really in comics?
Well, so one of the things that's really interesting to me about that is, I think another interesting aspect of comics is pace, because creators don't control pace on the page, but not how fast people read. And so that's a very interesting discussion my writing group and I have been having about where and how to disseminate information to slow pace, right? Like, so if you want readers to read at a certain way, you have to choose where information is placed, right? And so, but some people literally just flip through. The one thing I think is really interesting is when people like spoil things by going to, like, they'll read, and I was one of those people that would read the end page. I want to know how it ended, the cliffhanger. So I think conceptually, yes. I think there's an interesting difference between, again, creator and reader and control, right? But that's also a tension I love in comics anyway. I'm very so what I think we can do is make really interesting choices throughout a volume, but some of that choice making might be taken away by the way somebody consumes something.
Yeah, but it's also comics is the art form that depends more on the interaction with the reader, because we can manipulate. But you're watching a movie, it just
Right.
goes. You're reading a novel, you just have to go. In comics, you can flip the page or not, as you just said. So we need to get them involved. So in a way, we can manipulate up to a certain point. If the reader is not, as we said before, the color can take you out, the lettering can take you out. So if the pieces don't match, we are not going to get him involved. So we need a lot of reader participation in comics, right?
Yes, and I actually really, there is. It's why I talk a lot about this. I whine so much on Twitter, but I do ask that participation. I think also requires a certain amount of education.
Yes.
And one of the things I'm just interested in, it's not with judgment, is how to educate readers. And that sounds rude, because I don't mean to say it's like they're here and we're here, but how to talk to readers about the ways about things like what's happening between the gutters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of this is, or just like, yeah, I made that decision because my editor made me change the color. I don't know what to tell you, right? Like that's, or also, I mean, a grand debate that we have now is who contributes more, and that's a terrible way to phrase it, but is it the script writer? Is it the artist? Is it the color? Like, when people don't seem to understand that the story they're consuming is a group effort, as opposed to oh, I love the story, but I dislike the art. Well, but the art is conveying the story that you love so much. So
yeah, it's the synergy. If the synergy doesn't work,
right.
You're not reading a comic.
So what you're responding to are words and plot, not story, right?
Yeah.
What you are not responding to is aesthetic, style choice, etc., or the way narrative is told. But it's also not story. Like it's cumulative, and it's one of the reasons. Like, I remember fighting at Vertigo 15 years ago, and I think I could be wrong or right. I was the first Vertigo artist to get my colorist a cover credit, because at the time at DC it was considered production.
Yeah.
I was like, the color is so important on this work, they need a cover credit, and I fought for that, and I got it. I believe that is the correct history. That is my memory, because people don't understand that without how much color shapes the way we read. Quite frankly, how much art it saves as well. And I've seen a lot of readers, again, they don't know the difference between inking and coloring. They like, that penciler was so good when it's like a figure and the rest of the splash page is all color. And they don't seem to understand, like, no, that's the colorist work. Like, that it's this collaborative thing. And so one of the things I'm interested in is getting more readers who care to really understand like about the synergy. Like if what they are responding to is positive, there's a lot of people that went into that, not just a writer, not just an artist.
Absolutely. And that's also one of the reasons I keep fighting to say that to change the credit from colorist in every book to color artist.
I'm very, very, I don't know what because I was talking to someone about this. So the credit becomes very interesting with the Hollywoodization of comics.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you give a comic to a producer, and Hollywood is a highly partitioned business. There's not, if you either write or you direct or you do costumes, right? There's not a lot of awards are given to one. And so to go to a producer and say the artist came up with this entire scene, right? What does that mean? Like, wasn't it written? Like, they are more confused about the collaboration,
mm-hmm.
And so suddenly credit becomes very important. So that when a producer looks at the material, they know who to pay basically
mm-hmm.
for the option, and I think that becomes a very frustrating challenge for all of us, because if we're not championing each other, all of
Mm-hmm.
us, and say like, it's not just this person's book, it's all of our book. This thing that you're reading is a product of all of us, and therefore we should all get credit as creators. Because I think about like letterers are never going to get gobs of money from an option ever.
Mm-hmm.
And yet Todd Klein, if there's a person that deserves, whose storytelling, like in Sandman, like that lettering was so integral to the success of that book, and he'll never get the credit that so many others will.
Yeah, same with America's Best Comics. America's Best Comics was all Todd. Todd defined the whole line.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or Zukowski on X-Men for so many years. Like that lettering was so vital.
And as I was saying before, and John Workman defined also what the sign was.
And even Laura Martin on Ultimates, right? Like I fucking love that Brian Hitch art. But what I love even more is Brian Hitch art with Laura Martin. Like same
with Cassidy. For me, same.
Yes, 100%.
Cassidy, Planetaries, Cassidy, and Laura.
Yes, that
it's gotta be together.
And so anyway, I think about how to credit folks like colorists a lot, especially in the future, because we are more dependent on them than ever to fill out work. Because one thing I've noticed aesthetically is a lot of art has become much more, I'm going to say this, a lot of line work has become much more, it's less detailed. Simple is maybe the wrong word, but there's much less to it. Like the color is doing a lot more of, I would say, the hard work.
Yeah.
That's even unfair, but like some of the background labor. And so making sure that they get credit as well, I think is really, really important.
We should change in every book before naming writer, artist, blah, blah, blah. We should just say in a big letters, storytellers.
Yes. Well, that's why
including the whole team.
Totally fine with that. I'm absolutely fine with that. I have terrible news. I have to go.
Ouch.
Yes, I know it's almost been 2 hours, but unfortunately, I have to do another Zoom meeting at 1 my time, and I just realized that I just saw the time, and so I have to start wrapping this up, David.
Mm-hmm. It's fine. I'm sorry, guys. We didn't answer any of your question.
I'm very, very sorry. I just noticed the time, and I apologize. I just have to. Yeah, I just have to go.
It's what it is. Don't worry about it. If you have to go, you have to go.
Can I come back and at least can we do this again?
What? Excuse me?
Can we do this again?
Yeah, we can repeat it. We can do a sequel and put it all together in edits, and so you can answer everybody's questions. Yeah, that's fine.
Questions. I'm very sorry, everyone. David and I have not talked in a long time.
As you can notice. I'm sorry, you guys. Then we have to leave. Phil, please don't cut because I want you to say hello to somebody.
Oh,
when
sure, of course.
When we're off, and she's not going to come and see on screen when we're
What?
live.
I'm not going to do that. Okay.
Paloma is never. You know that.
Yeah.
So, to all of you, thank you so much. So sorry. Will be a sequel, as Phil said. We'll answer your questions there, or you send all your questions to him by Twitter. He probably answer them. Something like that.
Something like that.
See you all on Monday. Thank you, Phil. Everybody.
Thank you, David.
See you all on Monday with Mr. John Romita Jr.
Oh my God!
Yes, I
just wanted to talk about him too. Oh, damn! Oh my God! Tell him do me this favor. I don't think a lot of people give him the. I reread his X-Men work a lot. I don't even know if he likes it. I use it as a storytelling tool all the time. The black and white X-Men reprints are some of my favorite comic art ever.
If you see the text I did for his chat on Monday, I literally said his face should be in the dictionary next to the word storyteller.
He is one of the best storytellers in our business, bar none. And
you can jump in on Monday and on the chat and tell him something like, let me tell you just one thing, because somebody came to say hello, and Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. It was a pleasure to say hello to the fundamental team member of the C team.
Hello, my friend.
Just so
I hope
you know.
you're well.
Just have to say that to you. Anyway, to all of you, bye. Good
you.
weekend. Monday, John Romita Jr. Phil will probably come in on the chat to just type something for JRJR.
Yes.
Out in 3, 2, 1.